Is there such a thing as too much luck? Is there such a thing as too much fun? Messing around, wondering how it's taken so long. I'm really so strong. It's not too much at all.
Welcome to Too Much with Denise Hewett. I am very excited to be here today with the incredible Kat Gordon. And I met Kat, I was thinking about this. I met you at a dinner. It was like about inclusion in Hollywood, this dinner in LA. And I was building my company at the time, and we were talking about a lot of different inequity issues in Hollywood. And I was very excited about what Kat was doing, which was parallel to what we're discussing in the advertising world. And 8 months or so later, it was like a just good amount of time later, I had done this talk on inequity and venture capital in Hollywood. I remember I emailed you to see if it would be of interest, and you so graciously added me to the lineup of your big 3% conference. And I have an immense amount of gratitude for that moment because it was a launching for me in a lot of different ways. It was me taking my voice on a stage. It was you believing that I was worthy of your conference, which is it was a very big conference. It was sort of a big deal. And in a lot of ways, it launched my speaking career, put me on the map because there were people in the audience like Cindy Gallup who went on to share that talk line by line on Twitter, which was really crazy. And it began the path of me being represented by agents for conferences. And I will always be so grateful to you for that. So I just want to take a moment and just honor that because it meant so much to me.
Oh my goodness. That's so interesting to hear your perspective because for me, it was a total win for us. Like hearing your talk, and it was so aligned with a lot of the things we were trying to bring to light. And I can still see you on that stage in your heels. And I think you were in the morning, like one of the high energy
Yeah.
placements in the agenda, and people loved you. So, our pleasure to feature you.
Well, thank you. And what's really cool and funny is Kat and I both have radically rebuilt our lives since then. So we've been dancing around similar themes for a really long time. And I'm going to tell you a little more about her. Kat Gordon is the founder of the 3% movement and co founder of the 3% Coaching Coalition, a cohort of executive coaches who have all led creative teams. She was named one of 30 most creative women in advertising by Business Insider and Visionary of the Year from Advertising Age. She started the 3% movement to spotlight a huge business opportunity in advertising: the lack of female creative leadership and its impact on connecting with an overwhelmingly female marketplace. Since its 2012 launch, the 3% movement helped female creative directors rise from just 3% of the industry to 29%. Unbelievable. In addition to working as an executive coach, Kat is also a Reiki master. She serves on the board of the Representation Project and as an advisor to Empower Work. She is passionate about elevating the contributions of women and people of color, especially as they relate to innovation. Thank you for being here.
Such a joy.
Such a joy. And so I just want to get into it because you and I have both had sort of brutal rebuilding over the past 6 years. I would argue yours much more intense than mine. And I would love you to share with us what has transpired since you made a lot of big changes in your life, and just want to prime the audience so they can get up to date so we can take the next step together.
Yeah. I mean, I think about that list that you see where it's like super stressful life events. If you're going through any one of these, and I feel like I went through all of them in a very tight time frame. So COVID started in 2020. That's the year I ended my marriage of 27 years. That was also the year that my younger child graduated from high school and began college. So the fully empty nest, I'd had the half empty nest, but now I had the fully empty nest. I moved to an entirely new community to restart my life. And I closed the conference, not in 2020, but COVID was a real challenge for live events. And so I think it was 2022 when maybe it was 2021, when I finally said, no more live conferences. And that was really the lion's share. That was really my income. So, okay, what did I miss? Oh, yes, my father entered assisted living, then hospice, then died. I was with him at his death. I mean, he was an old man, but that was another kind of like journey. And menopause, like literally all of these things, complete my identity, all of the signifiers of who I was and who I belonged to and what I did, and all of them were stripped bare. And I think rebuilding your life, even after one of these things, let alone many of them, is the ultimate creative act. You know, it's a blank
Mm,
slate. So, yeah, I've been through it. And
really through it.
yeah, yeah.
And in the thick of that, how did you help yourself feel okay?
With varying success. I think about times of joy during those transitions. I think about very deep moments of grief. I let myself feel grief. I actually worked with a grief counselor who was
Mm,
outstanding and really helped me just not rush through that part of the human experience, but feel it all and learn and extract from it what I could. I also really got a lot of value out of Reiki, so much so that I decided to become a Reiki master, which you mentioned in my intro, which really was not on my bingo card for myself. So, energy work, grief counseling, therapy, as much time as possible in nature and as much time as possible in sacred community with people that I knew were trustworthy and loved me. I got a dog, which I remember when I adopted my dog, my therapist, Ken, said, she's going to help you heal even more than I have. And
mhm.
that has proven to be true. So it was an all hands on deck moment, like what healing modalities, what people, what places were nourishing for me.
Was your guiding light what felt nourishing or what felt joyful? How did you even figure out what you wanted to explore?
That's such a good question. Partly from recommendations from friends, like a friend told me about the grief counselor that had helped her a lot. And so seeing how it helped my friend Jen, I thought I'll give it a try. Reiki, something I had experienced before through times of transition, and I just had a feeling, oh, I think that would be a good time. We tend to think about healing or anything we're trying to figure out, we think it's like a neck up endeavor. Like, oh, I have to think about this, I have to read about this, I have to listen to podcasts. But I knew enough to know that the body stores a lot of stuck energy and grief. And so I thought I better identify a healing modality that isn't about me talking to somebody. And that was Reiki. So it was a little bit of trial and error. But yeah, what felt good, what felt like when I left a Reiki treatment or a therapy session, did I feel lighter? Did I feel like I'd released something? And I just kept following that kind of those impulses.
As you're breaking through into this newer, leveled up version, because I do think after anything traumatic or terrible happens, if we do heal and work through it, we do ultimately level up.
Yep.
Was there any part of your identity, your former identity, that you were clinging to or holding on to?
Probably. I think it happened in phases. Even the 3% movement, which had been known so much for these huge conferences, deciding to sunset the conference, that was a challenge. That was tough because there was still a lot of appetite for the community and from the sponsors. There was a lot of money that was wanting to invest in that. But I just really started to learn to trust my own instincts and my own inner knowing about when to transition. So it's a little bit of trial and error. I think the great gift of becoming a Reiki master is your intuitive abilities get really fine tuned. And so I really trust my intuition now. If I have a weird feeling or a good feeling about someone or something, to me, that's the ultimate endorsement. I don't need a third party to weigh in. I don't need to kind of feel distrust. I can just really listen to that inner knowing. And that's such an amazing GPS that, like, I wish for everyone to have that.
I feel the same way. It's very unquantifiable. Even when I interview people for jobs, their resume can make very little sense. But if I get that intuitive feel that I'm like, I believe in them, I think they can figure it out, or I think they're the right person for me. And it's so hard to explain to people because it is a process of really honing your intuition. I'm not a Reiki master, but intuition is something that I've gotten very clear very early in my career. Like I had to run on intuition because I didn't have a lot of experience and I was in a lot of these big jobs. And so I just had to learn to trust. I call instinct is like the unconscious version of intuition is what I believe.
Mm,
So back then it was instinct. I would say now it's intuition. It's been a long journey to get to a place of refinement,
yeah.
but it is the best guiding light of life because if you listen to that, you will never do what is wrong for yourself.
Yes. Exactly right. That's awesome that you've had that path and up leveled that inner knowing.
It'll be in my book, actually. It's one of the things I really drill in on because I got in touch with it so young. As I start to talk to people, I realize obviously, academically, I know a lot of people are cut off from their intuition. But as I started talking to more and more people, like my mom's friends who are 70, they're like, I'm just getting acquainted with my intuition.
Mm.
And I'm like, oh my goodness, there's all these people that don't know what their body is telling them, what their intuition is saying to them. And that is the point, is that we're on our own personal development path. We're all of our own map. So it's, you have to listen to what's right for you, which is not right for Susie or Joe or anybody else.
Mm.
But you have to get quiet to hear that voice.
Yep.
Do you feel like you always were intuitive or had a semblance of it and it's just gotten like a PhD in it? Or was it relatively new for you?
I always had a strong intuition. I think I was in certain situations, or I was with certain people that where I had to silence that, and I paid the price. And so I don't do that anymore. I'm really clear that this is the guiding force for me. And I remember when I was young reading Gavin de Becker's book, The Gift of Fear. I don't know if you know that book.
Mm,
It's in its probably millionth
yes.
printing, but it's about this exact subject, but more in the kind of crime and danger layer, but that every species on the planet has some form of protection, venom or talons or some way to protect yourself as a species. And for humans, it's intuition that literally was gifted to us as a way to know when we're safe or not safe, or when things are right for us or not. And that we live in a world where everything is amplified to an equal threat, and it's being funneled to us on every news channel. It's drowning out that inner voice. And the author, Gavin de Becker, he's like one of the foremost security experts in the world, like deals with hostage situations. And so he's seen a lot of examples of when people either overrode their intuition and paid a terrible price, or listened to it and escaped something really awful. And so I think that this subject has been around and has been interesting to me for a long time, but it's gotten to a different level for me as I've aged, where I see the applications of, and you used a word a moment ago, Denise, about silence. Like sometimes we need to find situations where the only input that we're getting is from that inner source. It's not, we're constantly in a loud, chaotic, overstimulated environment and we can never hear it. And so it's no surprise that part of being a Reiki master is daily meditation, which is silent. And so, yeah, my intuition is really present for me.
And also going through so many big life moments in such a condensed period of time, I'm sure that level of grief also pulled you into a lot of stillness
Yeah.
because you don't have anything to give. You're just trying to wake up every day and go through the motions. And in that, we had spoken a little bit about how you have leaned more into your intuitive, slower, softer side.
Yeah.
What have you learned from that transition? Because to pull off what, just to give everyone clarity, to pull off what Kat has pulled off in her lifetime to change the percentage of that in industry, that takes immense will, effort, and energy. That is like something is channeled within you and you become the thing to create that level of change. That's a very hard thing to do and to do successfully. And so that level of energy to where you're at now, what have you learned?
Yeah, it's funny. I was cleaning out my office recently and I found this email. I don't know why I'd printed out an email, and it was in my folders, and it was an 11-page email from me to the 3% conference team. And it was outlining every single thing that had happened on a recent trip to New York I had made, every person I met with, every opportunity, who should follow up. This person might be a good speaker. These people are ready to sponsor. Let's, 11 pages of this from one trip. And I think the final line in the email was something like, "Happy holidays, everyone." I mean, it was, and I sat and read this and thought, who is the woman that is this wind up toy that is giving this level of energy and focus, and it was unrecognizable to me. And I mentioned that to my coach, Rob Schwartz, recently, and he said, "What would you do differently?" And I said, "Oh, nothing. I'm glad I did all that because it needed to be done. And I was the person at that moment that saw it and brought the community together to get it done. And I'm glad it got done. And I'm glad I was the one to have done it. And I'm glad to not be that woman now, if that makes sense." So we have different seasons of our lives where at that time in my life, I had the energy and the fire in my belly, and I had people around me that were helping me build this thing and dismantle these systems that were really at odds with creativity and healthy culture. And but now I'm really, really glad to be in a different season of my life where I value quiet and peace and rest and meditation and all these different things. And that's the beauty of, I think, being human. Like, we live a long life, and we're not supposed to relive the same chapter over and over every year when we celebrate a birthday. It's not like, oh, I hope this year is exactly the same as the next one. I just wrote about this recently on my Substack. I said, we literally spend January 1st writing and inviting disruption into our lives, that we want new relationships, that we want new jobs, that we want new travels. And yet in the day to day, we don't want to get off the couch. It's this weird tension between wanting change and then resisting change. But I'm definitely in a chapter of my life where I've been through so much change, and I see how transformative it can be. And so I hope to welcome whatever change still comes my way. And I've got two sons that are in their 20s, and they're building their careers and relationships. And I feel so honored to be a touchstone for them, they call, when they're going through things. And it's just such an amazing thing to see people you love and people you've raised from day one. Now they're making their choices. Are they going to write the 11-page email, or are they going to more early want a more soulful, calm way of life? And that remains to be seen.
It's a lot of possibility, which I find as I've slowed down too, or just changed how I work. I find the possibility exciting, where my previous self wanted to control things more.
Mm,
And now I'm in this fun space where I'm like, oh, I just get to see what unfolds. I'm doing all that I can do, but there's only so much I can do. Whereas when I was building my startup, I was like, we are making everything happen. And that didn't make everything happen. I did not have the same path you did where it worked. So then you're like, okay, well, then I just have to sit here in this cool space of immense possibility.
yes, yes. Yeah, that's so beautifully said. And I just wrote about this also on my Substack, about how, as a coach, I'm now an executive coach. So many of my clients, there are things they're trying to build or figure out, or there are things they're committed to. And I, I really try to celebrate their determination while also encouraging them to have a lightness of touch, because I call it the delicate cocktail of like 3 parts of effort and 1 part of surrender. Like, you just can't muscle your way into everything. Some things need you to show up, be prepared, have the right frame of mind, have the right team around you. But not everything, so much of it is timing. Like the 3% movement, I just think was this beautiful movement that happened at exactly the right moment. It was 6 months before Lean In came out. It was when social media was really taking off, so that the sharing element of everything that was happening at our events just was magnified. And it just was, it was lucky, and it was hard work as
Yeah.
well. There's so much in life that we just don't get any guarantees that our investment will be returned in the way we intended, but it might be returned in a different way.
100%.
Yeah.
And my therapist said this thing to me towards the end of my tenure with my company, which she said, Denise, you're holding your dreams too tight.
Hmm.
When you hold them that tight, you don't allow the
Yeah.
universe to co-create with you. You have to give it some space. And it was such a game-changing lesson for me, because my whole life I had that tendency. I was like, I'm going to do this thing, and I would just make it happen. And this idea that the light grasp is exactly what an amazing coach would say. Oh, you're doing the amazing work, because it's so hard when you're in that tunnel vision of wanting to accomplish and you care so much to believe that, oh, if I lighten my grasp, that feels insane. And you're like, no, actually, that is actually where it can unfold. Because otherwise, you're only allowing for one possibility versus infinite possibilities.
So, so true. And I would argue that everything you just said is really true of raising children, whether they're your own children or your nieces or nephews or anyone that children that you care about. I see certain parents and they have such an idea of who each one, and even within their children, like this one's the smart one, this one's the athletic one. And I thought one of the greatest mysteries of being a mother was just watching the person that was the soul that was granted to me to steward. Like, what are their gifts? What are the things they love? How can I support them? Not how can I craft this thing into something that's reflective of my ego or hopes. And so, anyone that's raising children, I think there's a beautiful opportunity to remember that your children can surprise and delight you in ways you never could have imagined.
That's probably very hard. I know with my own parents, they project a lot of their fears and wants onto me, right? They want this thing for my life. They want to make sure that I'm comfortable and taken care of and nothing bad's ever going to happen.
Mm.
And it's like, that's your concern. That's your fear. That's not my fear. And just letting them be who they are and letting them discover for themselves, because I am taking a very, very different path than my parents took. And sometimes that's hard for them to understand.
Mm-hmm.
They're getting better. I'm trying to explain to them. But it's like when you're tapped into, for example, like more of a soul calling. Like for me, doing a job just for money feels absolutely like, why am I even here? Like I can't even be that person that could just go do something and maybe for a short period of time if I was desperate and need to get by. But ultimately, all the life choices I've made is to nurture a creative calling, something that's bigger than me. And so I think for people that maybe don't know what that calling is, have never felt that, or haven't allowed themselves to feel that, something like this feels absolutely insane and crazy to be a creative trying to figure out how to breathe what you want into the world. And so having a parent that can see that and say, I'm just going to help steward that, I'm just going to support you, it's a huge gift.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would argue that the parent who can't imagine wanting to birth whatever you want to birth, there's a good chance that they actually didn't meet all of their own personal goals if they're trying to control in this way their offspring. I don't know. There's something about, I even have a friend who was sharing with me that she's not sure that the person that her child has decided to marry, she's just not sure about the relationship. And she had all this anxiety about it. And I finally said to her, the worst thing that can happen is not that your child gets divorced. If divorce and realizing what's important to him helps him have a soul graduation into a deeper authentic vibration. Like we're so afraid of our kids like failing, dropping out of college or getting divorced or never getting married or whatever the things are. But if that path exposes them to choices and people and pain, that is the
Yeah.
growth opportunity, that's the foothold for some like greater expression of themselves. It's very hard to watch as a parent, but it's actually, I think, proof that they're stretching beyond their factory settings into something bigger,
Right.
which isn't that ultimately what we want? Or do we just want to never be
Right.
bothered or in a state of worry?
Right. But as someone who's been through an immense amount of growth and tragedy and heartbreak, you're more comfortable with those emotions, as am I, than people who have not. At some point, everyone in this life gets heartbroken. It's just part of the experience.
Oh.
My brother, for years, I was trying to save him from certain situations. He could be like, wouldn't listen to me, wouldn't listen to me. And then, of course, he met his own big heartbreak. And it was the thing that initiated him. It was the thing
Yes,
that pushed
yes.
him into a different passage of his life. And I've realized since then, I'm like, I'm here for the consult. Call me if you want my advice. But I am no longer inserting myself because I was trying to like save him or help him. And that's my own codependency and whatever. And I've reflected on that. And now I'm like, that is actually not in his best interest,
Hmm. Yes,
even though it comes from my most well intentioned place.
yes. Right. And what an unlock for you to realize that with someone you love, your brother. And we do this with friends, we do this with colleagues. And there's also like the aspect of karma. Sometimes when we almost allow people to mistreat us or don't call out difficult conversations and friendships, we're actually robbing the other person of a learning experience that might be painful, but might be and I don't mean karma in a super dramatic, deadly sense. I mean, just more someone actually dealing with the energy they've put into the world and making
Yeah.
amends and learning from it. Like, you're not helping someone if you're enabling that. And so I think that's another thing. I feel like my life is way cleaner now in terms of the people that are in it, the people that are close to me. I very choicefully selected them. And it's like everything's an opt in after a divorce. It's like, are these people coming with me? And not everyone's meant to scale the mountain with you. So we have to constantly
Yeah.
be thinking about what we want and what energy we want to have surrounding us and what feels safe. And those are decisions you have to keep making as you have more life experience.
Adrienne Marie Brown, she wrote a book about it, but she calls it like loving corrections. And I love that framing of it versus like accountability. Because I've had so many core friends who have lovingly corrected me. And those have been some of my most meaningful moments of growth or opportunity, like small thing. It wasn't like a big fight. One time I went to my friend's show, she was singing, and I was in the midst of like 8,000 work things. And I was like, I'm showing up, I'm coming. I come to the show. And afterwards, I'm like, it was great. And just for whatever reason, focused on her, like another person, her band. And later she's like, I know you're busy and you came, but it just felt like you weren't really there. It didn't feel like you were very attuned. You didn't really compliment my performance. And not that I need your compliment, but it just felt, and I was like, you know what? She's right, actually. She's 100% right. I showed up thinking that was good enough because I'm busy. I showed up, but I wasn't fully present.
Mhm.
And I said, I will never do that again. I will never show up and just think that me being there is enough if I didn't bring my full self to it, because then I'm not really there. Why did I bother to come if I'm not really going to be fully present? And since then, that's now how I operate. I will not come if I can't give you full attention.
Yeah. And your friend saying that to you is actually a love letter. It's, you matter to me. I invited you here because you're sacred to me and I want you to be fully present. And so I love that. That's actually, you might see that as conflict between two people, but I also see it as a real calibration around the contract you two have signed as friends of like, what does that mean? What does showing
Right.
up for a friend mean? And we don't have those conversations very often. We need to.
Like, here's the thing, most people would turn that into conflict. It doesn't have to be conflict. And that's really what you learn is there might be some discomfort there.
Yes.
I might feel a little bit of shame. I might feel a little bit of regret, but that's okay. Then I just get to do better next time. And if you're in the right relationships, that's what a relationship is. These periods of grace where we all fall, we make a mistake, or hey, that made me feel bad. Great. You're not ending anything. You're just moving through something. And I think that's the attitude we need to just politically and everything like move through right now is just a little more compassion, a little more space for discomfort. And I think magic can happen on the other side.
Yeah. 100%.
As you were finding your inner resilience through this process, can you tell me about what that looked like for you? I think resilient is it's a muddy word. I don't think everyone fully knows. How do I become a resilient person? What is the process? How do you know if you're resilient? And I think oftentimes you don't know till you're in the thick of it.
Yes.
But can you just walk us through some of that process?
Oh, man. Like when you asked that question, I just saw it as like a movie where there was like a split screen of one screen where I'm in therapy and like having an aha and it's very measured and safe. And then other scenes where I'm just falling apart and moody and not able to find my gear again. It was messy and it wasn't linear at all. And I guess I would say I kept coming back to I kept coming back to how I wanted to feel in my body. That's
Mm.
another thing. We're so disconnected from our bodies. And I really started to pay attention to when I felt calm and when I felt joy. And I remember I'm somebody that when I wake up in the morning, I'm usually not in a great mood. Like I'm very slow to wake up. And there was one day where I woke up and I was in such a good mood. And I was like, what is going on? And then I realized the evening before I had been at a friend's wedding and I'd been dancing all night. And I thought, oh my goodness, yes, there's a correlation between that kind of movement, especially like shaking and grief. Like a lot of cultures,
Mm.
they'll have shaking rituals to get stuff out of them. And so I just really paid attention to my body. When did I feel good? When did I feel energized? When did I feel drained? And the things that made me feel drained, I tried to eliminate them. Tried to watch my drinking. Living in the wine country, wine everywhere, just started to think like, that could easily become a daily thing. Do I want that? Movement, got a dog, going walking every day, felt super good. Tennis, I play USTA tennis. Probably the most joyful thing I do, playing tennis. You're outside, you're in community, it's strategic, it's just, you're sweaty. I absolutely love playing tennis. So I tried to put as much tennis into my calendar as possible. So really it was that kind of like day by day trial and error, like what's working, what's not working. And some days I couldn't figure out why. And I was like, maybe it's hormones, maybe it's, I don't know. And eventually got to a place where I felt like I feel pretty good. My life is feeling like it's in a, like I'm on solid ground again. But it took a long time. And I think we have to normalize that for people. You know, I think whether it's you've lost somebody and you're grieving a death, or you've lost a job or a career or an identity as someone who's married or a mother, or these things are not fast to recover from. Like they have a long tail. And there were times where I would be upset about something and I'm like, I can't believe I'm still like thinking of
Yeah.
this. But there was a therapist that I read that said that it's not rumination if you're still making fresh connections when you think about something. And so that became my filter. If I was ruminating about something, about my divorce or something, as long as I was making a new connection by thinking about it for the millionth time, it was allowable. If it was just, oh, here's that worry bead in my brain that I keep going back to that doesn't feel good, I would try really hard to not allow myself to stay there.
Yeah. It's also just not linear. There's so much of these traumas where it's like you're in these periods where you're cruising and you're like, okay, I'm on solid ground again. And then I'll just come back. And then you're like, I thought I was over this. And I think that's just part of the healing process. But during those times when I was going through immense heartbreak, I would just beat myself up and be like, how are you still upset about this? Or why is it still here? And the reality was it wasn't the same as it was when it first happened. It changes when it shows up again. But that space of not judging when it shows up again is hard.
Yeah. There's a great book that I read recently about grief. And by the way, grief does not equal death. Everyone thinks grief just means death. And the title is As Long as It Takes. So
Yep.
exactly what you're saying. And it's written by a hospital chaplain who's seen a lot of death and grief, and talks exactly about what you said, that like grief is like a tricky bitch. It really steals little minutes from you and little things that you didn't think were happening. And, but in a way, sometimes when that happens, to me, it's an opportunity to be like, damn, like we really love hard. Like we're a human species that like feelings go deep. We like to think we're
Yep.
sanitized and everything's kind of lightweight and Facebook likey at that level of kind of endorsement, or, but we're mammals. Like we have nervous system and
Yep.
we have feelings and we have memories. And so in a way, sometimes it really reminds me how precious we are and how we are porous. We take things in and they hurt.
Mm-hmm. When I was younger, I knew that I sometimes stayed in heartbreak because it reminded me of how much I cared and how much I felt.
Oh,
And so when I would go through these breakups with these men, I would be like, I don't know if I'll ever feel this much for somebody again,
mm,
right? This is all
mm.
pre-therapy when you realize, oh, no, don't worry, honey, you will. But at that time, I remember some of the thinking was if I let it go, I'll forget how much I cared. Using it as a barometer for our ability to see how deep and the scale and magnitude of what we can feel is a beautiful thing, but you can't stay there forever. And that was something I've had to learn. But when it shows up, I think that's where I'm at now, is sort of like, God, I really cared and loved hard. Cool. Good for me.
Yeah, that's awesome, Denise. You should try your hand at songwriting because it seems like you're really awake to that. And do you know what Enneagram type you are?
I'm an 8.
Oh,
I'm an 8, which is like dictator energy on the dark side. On the light
mm.
side, we're better. But it's true. I'm like, every time I read it, I'm like, oh, if we hadn't gone to therapy, this would have been bad.
Oh my God. Because there's another one, and I can't remember what number it is, that almost enjoys sitting in the suck, like really likes to explore all of the emotionality on the spectrum and can tolerate, which is not me. I'm the number 7, the enthusiastic visionary. Like I run away from the dark feelings. But I wonder if there's a little bit of this other type in you.
I'm sure there is because I find emotionality very, very interesting. How can we have better words to feelings and what are the sort of nuances within the emotional language we have? Because I think so many of us are just not in tune with what we are feeling. And I feel a lot. I'm a big feeler. That's just my mode. So it's always like, how can I help people just see all the colors in the spectrum of emotion instead of taking us to these places where they're so binary?
Yeah, so beige. Yep.
I love that you leaned on dance. I was a very serious dancer growing up, and before I came to LA, I used to teach girls that couldn't afford dance class in Harlem. I'd go up every weekend and teach dance. And when I moved to LA, I remember I wrote them this letter because I was sad that I had to leave them behind, was that I told them, I was like, whether or not you pursue dance as like a career, as a hobby, whatever it is, dance is your tool. Dance is a life tool that will carry you through the good and the bad. And for me, every time something hard happened, I would just dance it out. Like dance became this sort of mechanism I use to process all the grief or pain. And it's so amazing that you intuitively just were like, yeah, that made me feel good. And it's just a rich space to use as a tool. It's nothing else.
Yeah, exactly. And I wasn't raised as a dancer, but my body really responds to that movement and to music. Like that's another thing. I feel like there's certain songs that helped me through feelings that were tough, to just like almost like little anthems of my life. So I have some playlists that bring me back there.
No, I get it. I have different songs for different breakups that I'm like, oh, that's that one. I remember I'll hear it. I'm like, oh, yeah. Remember when you were playing that on repeat 40 times a day for 4 months? Okay.
Hilarious.
You had told me about you have a framework for resilience. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's actually so I even though I don't put on my 3% conference anymore, the 3% movement puts on creative retreats once a year and ours is in September, so coming up September 2025. This will be our 4th one and it's in the Berkshires in Lenox, Massachusetts. And the theme is creativity and resilience. And so the goal is to bring together creative women who everyone seems to be going through something. At our last retreat during the intros, it was like people that had lost parents, people that had lost jobs, people that were going through divorces, people that had empty nests, like all the things I've been through, they were going through and more. And so we're bringing together, I'm obviously teaching some of it, but we have Tracy Candido, who's another coach I'm in community with. She's coming to teach parts work. Are you familiar with what parts work is?
Yeah, Richard Schwartz, Dr. Schwartz.
Yeah. So, like, really helping you identify in certain places where you feel either stuck or like you can't understand your own motivation, to think, like, who's present here that's a part of you, not the entirety, but it can be an inner child. It can be a very judgy voice inside yourself. So, she'll be there to help us identify and make friends with some of those parts that might be holding us back. I will be teaching a lot of things I've learned through Reiki. We've got someone doing breath work. I'm going to be teaching a little bit about meditation and positive neuroplasticity. And then it's not all like we're teaching, it's we're going on a beautiful picnic and art walk and, in nature, that kind of immersion. So resilience to me is leaning on your people and leaning on these tools and ways of being that can help you, like, manage your vagus nerve and manage your nervous system. And I think people are so disconnected from their bodies. And whenever you hear people say, like, okay, just breathe, which is accurate, I don't think many people understand why that works. And back to our origin and our species, you could not take a deep belly breath if you were being chased by a tiger. And our brains don't always know the difference between being chased by a tiger and being anxious about a potential layoff. One is potentially life ending and one is an inconvenience. And so there are ways you can remind your nervous system that it's not under the threat that it thinks it is. And breath work is just one example. So yeah, it's bringing, and I think just the community element alone is resilience. Being in community, being in sacred community with people that you can trust and who are going through it with you and not sugarcoating it. It's amazing how just stating how hard it is right now can be ridiculously healing to people. I mean, so many people are just business as usual and they're posting their shit everywhere and not honoring that, like, this is a really, really, really hard time to be alive. And if you're an empath and if you're paying attention and if you have any kind of nervous system challenges or mental health challenges, which quite frankly, anxiety is at a world the highest it's ever been, like none of us is coming to this with a full set of kind of our resources. And so creative resilience is about, like, what are the tools that you can have at the ready? Who are the people that you can have on your board of advisors, your trusted team? And how can you practice compassion, that this is just a very difficult time to be someone who's paying attention.
I just listened to Francis Weller. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's a grief expert. And he says that humans in like caveman times, early civilization times, you had grief rituals, which would be go every day in community and you would grieve. And now we're expected to do this traumatizing, laborious work by ourselves. And actually, that's so not how humans were built to process. And so he's trying to bring back this idea that can we understand that grief is a community project? And if we're in this individualistic time, then your job is to build your community to help you process the grief.
Yeah, 100%. And how did we lose that knowing? I love that this author is popularizing it, and but like, why is that a mystery to us? Of course grief is
Yeah.
a communal thing. Everything is a communal thing. We are tribal creatures. We belong to
Yeah.
each other.
We've lost sight of that point, which is why I think we're living in the world we're living in, is because we've stopped prioritizing the collective, the community, the earth, all the things that kept us really stable and grounded. And so if you take away what are the natural tendencies of a human, you create instability.
I really think we are souls. I believe that we live multiple lifetimes, and I don't know if that's your belief system too, but
It is.
it is.
I'm a very old soul.
I'm a very old
Okay. I cannot.
soul as well. And where I'm going with this is, we have a lot of young souls in charge right now. We have a lot of people that don't understand that we belong to each other, that don't understand that we are nature, that don't understand the collective. And the thing that's so maddening is not that those people get to exist or have power, but why do they get to be the pace setters? Like, the old souls should be the pace setters, the people that have mastered some things and understand the collective and can manage their nervous system, and that becomes contagious to others. Those are the people we need leading. Those are the people we need visioning what's possible. And somehow it's out of balance right now, where the young souls that think it's all about our ego, they're in charge. They're making decisions about our planet. They're making decisions about corporations, all the wealth amassment, all the CEO salaries. And it feels like we're at a breaking point where the planet can not withstand such a break with a truth of what we're here to do and who we are.
We are at a tipping point. And the way I've contextualized it is we in America specifically are living out the values we have revered. Like that's what's happening. If you revere money as your god, individualism, then this is exactly the times that we deserve. And I hope the reaction or counterbalance to that is that we get back to the values that are important. If this creates such chaos, who's to say that the destruction is not the rebirth? And that's how I've looked at this all the way through, as maddening and hard every day, obviously, because in the thick of this, people are getting hurt.
Hmm.
People are not being taken care of. People's like quality of life will diminish. That part is very painful to me. But hopefully, there is something that comes out of this that creates deeper unity, less division, more emphasis on taking care of each other. And that is my guiding light, is that I had a Dr. Dacher Keltner, who's a social scientist, on the podcast, and he studied the science of power, and what we're living through right now, as he says, is unsustainable. Like, you can't power that comes by force is not true power. So it's not something that will sustain. And so that has been what I have been holding on to,
Mm.
is they will create their own destruction, and all we have to do in the interim is take care of our community and our people and keep fighting for what we believe humanity is, and let them become their own undoing.
Yes, exactly. And I actually read his book about awe. And
Yeah.
um, you're not in awe when you're making billions of dollars. You're not in awe when you're deforesting the forest. You're in awe when
Mhm.
you are in connection with other people, and you are in awe when you are in nature and seeing things that are just magnificent.
Yeah.
And so I love that he really talks about how awe is one of the most, if not the most enlivening human emotion. And that the more we get back to that, the more we will balance out. And it will just dictate our behavior. We'll want to be in reverence for the planet. We'll want to be in community. I said this recently on another interview about how if you talk to people that have won all the big things everyone wants to win, Nobel Prize, Oscars, Olympic medals, they, when asked, like, tell me about the most meaningful thing in your life, it's their children, it's their trips to some beautiful part of the world that they feel called to, where they're doing some meaningful volunteer work. Or it's not the things, it's not the shiny trophies, it's the being in sacred community, it's understanding your full humanity, it's the magnificence of the earth and the oceans. And it's a really interesting time. I almost feel like maybe like lives are just a series of us remembering shit we learned before that we somehow forgot, and then we finally remember it, and then we die, and then we come back and we've forgotten again. It's like this weird treadmill. But maybe the cycle gets shorter as our soul evolves, where we remember sooner.
Yeah. I hope so. I was very sad that Andrea Gibson left
Oh,
us, the poet,
yes.
one of my favorite poets. But Andrea's a really beautiful example, and we have so many books from her, and her partner is going to continue to release her work. But with these poetry books, with these videos of someone who was battling terminal cancer and somehow felt like it was worth being here
Yeah.
and to fight for this life and didn't want to leave even though it was their time. And so I reflect on that as someone who sometimes is, because I think it's common in our vernacular right now, is like, oh, I hate it here, or I hate it here. And it's like, yes, there's a lot of really crazy challenges that we are up against right now.
Mm.
But the people that are on the brink of death still want to be here. So let us remember that, those of us that have like the gift of health, to put that to work because other people don't have the same luxury.
Yes. Amen. Perspective.
Can you tell me what was the most surprising lesson from this whole transition in your life?
Ooh, that's a juicy question. You said surprising?
Mhm.
I would say that the little girl who, for many different reasons, got taken off her course of who she really was, I found her again. Like, she showed up, and she had a lot to say. And but she really was the wisest part of me, and she had been silenced for a long time, or just she'd had to perform as someone different for love and belonging. And I think the most surprising thing was realizing, like, I noticed shortly after my separation and moving out on my own and a lot of loneliness and fear, I noticed this giggle coming out of me in conversation with friends. It was like a sound effect I'd never heard come out of my body before. And it was
Mm.
spontaneous and it was infectious. And I was like, what is that sound? And it was that little girl, like, feeling like it was finally safe for her to come forward. And so I think the biggest surprise was, despite all of this upheaval, all of this scarcity and fear of having to reinvent myself, a lot of financial stuff, being with my dad when he died, like literally holding his hand as he took his last breath, just the two of us, the only ones in the room. Really, the biggest surprise was that there was a completely intact soul that was my purest self. And I got to bring her forward. And I now feel like I am an embodiment of the soul I was at birth. And I think this is probably true for a lot of people. Like, there's so many reasons we are told to be something slightly different than what we are, and to perform or to be good at something that maybe wasn't our first choice or our calling. And so the greatest surprise and delight is coming back to, is the homecoming of who you really are.
I love that.
Hmm.
And I want to thank you for showing us that it's never over. What I want people to understand is it's never too late, and it's never like the worst things, the most heartbreaking things can happen to us, and somehow humans are wildly resilient beyond our wildest dreams. And so thank you for just being a living embodiment of that and giving us this wisdom today, because it helps me to know it. So I hope it helps other people too.
Oh my gosh, what a joy to be in conversation with you.
Yeah, I hope we get to do it again soon.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you so much for listening. If you do like listening, it would mean the world to us if you could subscribe or review the podcast anywhere that you watch or listen to the podcast. It really helps with the algorithm to share this with the world. I want to give a special thank you to young Spielberg and Sarah Yarkin for their beautiful work on our opening jingle, Dana Boulos for her help with the beautiful art, and to all of you for tuning in and keeping this dream alive. If you want to hear certain topics or from certain guests, please feel free to email us. We really, really want to hear from you and see how we can best support you. See you next time.